Picture this. Ed Warren is hanging by his fingertips from a second-story window, a terrified little girl in his arms, while a massive tree spike, created by a lightning strike, is literally inches away from impaling them both. Lorraine is screaming a name that could either save their lives or damn them all to hell. This is the moment when everything goes sideways in one of the most bone-chilling supernatural cases the Warrens ever faced. But how did they end up in this life or death situation? Well, it all started with a little girl named Janet Hodgson and a very pissed off ghost who refused to leave his favorite chair. But before we dive into this nightmare, smash that like button if you're ready for some serious chill, and don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling movie breakdowns. So here's the deal. Ed and Lorraine Warren were basically the rock stars of ghost hunting back in the day. But after their investigation of that infamous house in Amityville, where a guy named Ronald DeFeo Jr. went completely psycho and murdered his entire family, claiming he was possessed by demons, things got really complicated for our paranormal power couple. See, the media had a field day with the Amityville case. Critics were calling it a hoax, saying the Warrens were just attention-seeking fraudsters trying to make a quick buck off people's fears. The whole paranormal investigation community took a massive hit to their credibility. People started treating ghost stories like a joke, and honestly, who could blame them? Something absolutely terrifying was brewing across the pond in London. Meet the Hodgson family, a single mom named Peggy, trying to raise 4 kids in a cramped little house in Enfield, North London. Life was already tough enough for them, but then 11-year-old Janet decided to mess around with a Ouija board that her friend had given her. Big mistake. Huge mistake. Now, I don't know about you, but playing with Ouija boards is like inviting trouble to come knock on your door with a sledgehammer. And that's exactly what happened to poor Janet. She started sleepwalking, which was weird enough, but here's the kicker. She would always end up sitting on this beat-up old armchair in the corner of their living room. Every single time. One day, Janet's home alone, probably just trying to watch some television or do her homework like a normal kid, when she sees something that would give anyone nightmares for the rest of their lives. Sitting in that same armchair was the ghost of an old man, and this guy was not happy. He's screaming at the top of his lungs, "This is my house, this is my house," over and over again. Now, if that was me, I would have been out of there faster than you can say nope, but Janet's stuck living in this house, and things were about to get a whole lot worse. That same night, all hell breaks loose. Peggy and the other kids are witnessing furniture moving by itself. We're talking heavy wardrobes just sliding across the room like they weigh nothing. The family is so freaked out, they run to the neighbors, and when the cops show up, even they see chairs moving on their own. When police officers, people who've seen everything, are backing up your ghost story, you know something serious is going down. Word gets out, and suddenly the Hodgson house becomes the hottest ticket in town. News crews are camping outside, reporters are shoving microphones in everyone's faces, and the whole world wants to know what's happening in this little house in Enfield. But here's where things get really creepy. During one of these media interviews, Janet gets possessed right there on camera. The ghost starts speaking through her, introducing himself as Bill Wilkins. This guy claims he used to own the house and died sitting in that exact same armchair about 40 years ago. And he's making it crystal clear that he wants his house back, no matter what it takes. Bill's not messing around either. He's telling everyone he's going to make the Hodgson family's life a living hell until they pack up and leave. The poor kid is speaking in this gravelly old man's voice that sounds nothing like her own, and is absolutely bone-chilling to watch. Meanwhile, back in the States, Lorraine Warren is having her own supernatural encounters. She's getting visits from this demonic nun entity that's been haunting her since the Amityville case. This thing is showing her visions of Ed's death, basically threatening her to stay out of the paranormal investigation business. The demon even makes her tear up her Bible while she's in some kind of trance. Talk about psychological warfare. When news of the Enfield haunting reaches the Warrens, the local church basically begs them to come investigate. They need to know if this is the real deal or just another hoax that's going to make them all look like fools. Ed and Lorraine are hesitant because of all the criticism they've been getting, but they can't ignore a family in need. So they pack their bags and head to London, where they meet the Hodgson family and two other paranormal investigators, Maurice Gross and Anita Gregory. These guys have been studying the case, and they are just as baffled as everyone else. To prove that Janet isn't faking the possession, they come up with this clever test. They have her drink water and hold it in her mouth while Bill Wilkins supposedly speaks through her. The idea is that if she's making the voice herself, she won't be able to do it with her mouth full of water. So, they're all sitting there with their backs turned to Janet, listening to this creepy old man's voice coming from the 11-year-old. Ed pulls out his crucifix, and suddenly Bill starts screaming and speaking in tongues like he's being tortured. When they turn around, Janet still has the water in her mouth, but they still can't definitively prove she's being possessed. Ed and Lorraine decide to stick around and observe the family more closely. They're staying in the house, trying to gather more evidence, when Janet gets possessed again in the kitchen. This time, she's causing a complete ruckus, throwing things around, and when Ed approaches her with his crucifix, she starts speaking in that same incoherent voice. But here's the plot twist that changes everything. They catch Janet on camera faking some of the paranormal activity. She's bending spoons and making things move when she thinks no one is looking. Anita Gregory, who's been burned by fake cases before, immediately calls BS and leaves. Ed and Lorraine are disappointed and decide to head back to America too. But just as they're about to board the train back home, Ed has one of those light bulb moments that changes everything. He's been thinking about the two different voices he heard Janet make during her possessions, and when he placed them back in his mind, he realizes something terrifying. When you combine those sounds, they form a cry for help. Help me! This is when the real truth comes out, and it's way more sinister than anyone imagined. Bill Wilkins isn't the main villain here, he's actually a victim too. The real puppet master behind all this chaos is that demonic nun that's been tormenting Lorraine. This entity has been using Bill's spirit to terrorize Janet, slowly breaking down her will and her sanity. Ed and Lorraine realize they've been played, and more importantly, they realize that Janet is in immediate danger. Now, the demon has made its final move. Janet gets violently possessed and locks herself inside the house, and this time, there's no faking it. The entity is done playing games. It's going for the kill. Ed and Lorraine race back to the Hodgson house, but Janet has barricaded herself inside, and the demon isn't letting anyone in easily. Ed, being the absolute badass that he is, decides to take matters into his own hands. He's going to crawl through the basement and find another way into the house, even though every horror movie ever made tells us that going into the basement is a terrible idea. As Ed makes his way through the dark, cramped basement, you can feel the tension building. The house is groaning and creaking around him, like the building itself is alive and trying to stop him. Then, without warning, the heating pipes explode with scalding steam, and Ed gets blasted right in the face. The guy is temporarily blinded, stumbling around in agony, but he doesn't give up. He keeps pushing forward because he knows Janet's life depends on it. Meanwhile, upstairs, Janet is in full possession mode. Ed finally makes it upstairs, half blind and injured, but determined to save this kid. The demon nun, and let me tell you, this thing is the stuff of nightmares, appears and starts messing with Ed's head. It's showing him false visions, trying to confuse him, leading him toward the second-story window where Janet is standing. And here's where we get to that moment I described at the beginning. Lightning strikes the massive tree in the Hodgson's backyard, creating this enormous wooden spike that's pointing directly at the window. Janet, still possessed, starts walking toward the open window, and she's about to jump to her death. Ed lunges forward and grabs her just as she's about to go over the edge. But now, they're both hanging out of the window, and that tree spike is literally inches away from impaling them both. Ed is holding onto Janet with one arm and gripping the window frame with the other, but his strength is giving out. The demon is laughing, thinking it's won. This is the moment when Lorraine becomes the hero of the story. While Ed is literally hanging by a thread, she's frantically searching through her torn Bible, looking for something that can save them. Remember that vision the demon showed her earlier, where she was tearing up the holy book? Well, it turns out she wrote something down during that trance, the demon's true name. Lorraine finds what she's looking for and runs upstairs, screaming at the top of her lungs, "Valak, I banish you back to hell." The effect is immediate and dramatic. The demon nun lets out this otherworldly shriek that sounds like 1,000 souls being tortured at once. The antidote, his form becoming less solid, less real. But strip away its power. With the demon's hold broken, Ed finds the strength to pull himself and Janet back through the window to safety. The possessed girl collapses, finally free from the entity's control. And the house falls silent for the first time in months. The nightmare is over, but just barely. In the aftermath of this supernatural showdown, Janet is completely back to normal, reunited with her family and finally free from the torment she's endured for months. Ed, being the gentleman he is, gives Janet his personal crucifix as protection, a gesture that shows just how much this case meant to him personally. The Hodgson family can't thank Ed and Lorraine enough for not giving up on them. Back home, Ed adds a new artifact to their collection. The movie ends with Ed and Lorraine dancing to Elvis Presley's "Can't Help Falling in Love." The Enfield case went down in history as one of the most well-documented paranormal investigations ever recorded, and Peggy Hodgson lived in that house for the rest of her life, eventually dying in 2003, while sitting in the same chair where Bill Wilkins had passed away decades earlier. The Warrens prove once again that sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones that are actually true.